to another ASA webinar. Can you all hear me? I can see our guest with me now, Drew Ferguson. Can you hear me, Drew? I can't hear you. I can only, at the moment, see you. There you go. Okay, welcome everyone. So I'm going to start the presentation today. I'm presenting on adaptive soccer. It's a passion that I've picked up very early in my coaching career back home in England. And it was adaptive soccer, disability soccer, and female soccer that I got involved predominantly coaching at a time where most of the soccer in England was for boys and males, all hoping to chase the dream. So I just want to talk through in this webinar how the world is changing and how important it is to embrace adaptive soccer. So hold on, I'm there. Right. So again, also we've got Drew Ferguson online. He's going to come and talk towards the end of the presentation. For anyone from Edmonton, and I know we've got a guest here from BC. Drew spent many years playing in Edmonton, and he's been involved with the para soccer program for Canada Soccer for over 10 years. So I want to really talk through with Drew the changes that he's seen and how we can encourage more players to get involved. I know in my involvement with Alberta Soccer, Drew's often come over and impacted watching and selecting players from all over the country. So we're looking all the time to build our programs. Now, why is adaptive soccer important to our club system? And I really want to hit home on this in that the culture within Canada is very member driven. And in terms of that, it's performance, and a lot of it is performance and outcome driven. But here's a stat that is really startling. In 2017, 1 in 5, 22% of the Canadian population over 15 has a disability of some sort. And it's interesting. I remember on one of Drew's visits, we sat and watched the Danone Cup with about 200 children playing at shoulder ice. And he threw this stat at me. So we had lots of children playing, and there was probably players in that 200 group of players who could grow up and play for Drew on a cerebral palsy team. There might be other players within there who may have a disability. And I know growing up in England, everyone just played together. I can remember as a young player playing with someone who was deaf, someone who was an amputee. So again, while we're looking at this, I want you to consider your own team. If we're saying 1 in 5 and you've got a squad of 15, there's possibly 2 or 3 players on that team who have some form of a disability. How do we accommodate those individuals? And do we even know what their impairment is, or how we can support them to be integrated and stronger within the team? You know, again, whenever we work with a new group of players, what are the markers that we're looking for? Are they evident? So again, that's what I'm asking there. How can we accommodate them? And even if you're a big club and you've got 20 teams, that's possibly 40 coaches. Are we supporting the coaches to be better coaches within that program? I know through my years working just with Alberta Soccer, I can think straight away of 2 coaches who have worked for me who have had to come to me after going out and doing the practical coaching and being great and saying, look, John, I'm really sorry, I can't do a report because I'm dyslexic. And do we make accommodation for that? You know, it was something that they didn't want known, but we need to embrace. So I think if we're going to be supporting, and this is where I'm coming from for this, is if we're coming out of COVID especially, and we're trying to get soccer back and all sports back into a bigger profile, we need to be encompassing and understand the market of what we're working. So this is some of the considerations. Like I say, when I grew up in England, it was just, yeah, okay, you might be deaf. And the guy I know who played for a team that I had, we were shouting instructions at him for half a game. And at halftime, someone actually said to him, are you deaf or what? And he said, yeah. We didn't know. He didn't want to broadcast it. And it was through that it was just a case of having to deal with it. And there was no accommodation made. So we need to think about that. And I'm saying here, society is changing. We've seen it. Black Lives Matter. You know, I'm chatting with a friend this morning about the case that it's still quite a man's world, and we need to be embracing and empowering more women to take leadership roles. cultural religious grounding. There's so much going on, and there's legislation. So the Mental or Physical Disabilities and Discrimination Act in Alberta is quite specific, and a lot of it will be driving how we support athletes and our sports programs in the future. So again, even accessibility. Does the facility you're using, can it accommodate someone using a wheelchair? And for someone who worked with the Soccerability program when I first got it going in Alberta a good few years ago, it was always a challenge finding a suitable venue for power soccer players using electric wheelchairs to access in snowy conditions with ramps, and are the ramps wide enough? So we need to be considerate if we're going to be embracing sport in the community. Like I say, why should we do this, and what is the legislation for? It's for inclusion and development as well. We need to make our society more active. I know some players who play on the power soccer program, and they'll tell me they've got colleagues who will argue, say, well, why should I'm never going to be a soccer player. Why should I go and try and play in a wheelchair, electric wheelchair? I might as well just stay here and play my games. And we don't want to do that. The guys who I know who do come out and play are very competitive, very outgoing, and they want to achieve as much as any player playing. Alphonso Davies, they have that same passion and drive. They want to compete. The fact that they're playing in a different sport with different limitations is irrespective. And I'll say this, when I worked in England, I was at Middlesbrough, we set up our own Soccerability program. That will be 17, 18 years ago. It's still going. And I remember we used to play in a northeast of England regional competition. So the guys with all impairments would jump on the bus, adults, they'd go and play in different categories. And everyone would say, well, it's just disability soccer. And the referees aren't that important. I promise you, in those games, the language, the competitive spirit, it was as competitive as any adult league. So we need to understand that sport and competition, irrespective of what impairment someone may have, is vital. And as a club, we should be offering those opportunities. Now, more player members within your club. And at the moment, the Soccerability program, the para and power soccer, is run by Alberta Cerebral Palsy, and they've done a great job taking it on. But I think that we need to be giving it back to clubs. And one of the reasons is that if you have two children, one with an impairment and maybe one without, you're now going to two clubs. That's two schedules. That's two trips. How good would it be if I've got a club, a Northeast Soccer Club or a Northwest Soccer Club in Calgary, and they can accommodate both my children? They can both go and play in the same club, wear the same jersey, and represent that club. So again, it is about inclusion and developing membership. And I'm saying that is what is going to be really, really key to all clubs coming out of COVID. I think, we're down something like 50% of players. So if we're looking to build and retain players, we need to open up these doors. Competitive opportunities. Wouldn't it be neat if we could do similar to, I don't know if Matt Greenwood's online, but he's a colleague of mine in BC, and he's got over 20 competitive clubs playing within soccer clubs in our Ontario. 20, and I know Ontario's bigger. Wouldn't it be great if we could get 4 or 5 clubs that have an adaptive program within their clubs, and we can offer competitive opportunities? Like I've just said, for me, competition, irrespective of the level of performance that you're doing, it hits us all. It strikes a chord. Whether you're wearing the jersey for Canada or whether you're wearing your Timbits jersey, it's still there. Now, the other rationale for adaptive soccer is enhanced coaching development. And I've said this many a time. At Middlesbrough, I had a really good coach who could work with the U4s in the morning, the first team, the professional first team in the afternoon, and the academy kids in the evening. He was great, could work right across the board. I also had lots of coaches. I could think of 2 at the moment who played for Northern Ireland in a World Cup, played for Middlesbrough. and were very limited in who they could coach. For me, if you can work across pan abilities and develop the skills of communication and connection, then that's going to enhance your coaching. So I've had it thrown at me before. How do you do that? And it's come and watch, come and see the connection that I build with the players, and then how far it goes, how far it helps your coaching develop within whatever club you're doing. So I might work with an autistic school one day, and then Mount Royal and the university. So I'm still coaching, but they both give me a challenge and develop me as a coach. So if you run a coaching program within your club and you taught them how to coach all abilities, that's going to enhance your club. That's going to enhance that connection to the players and only support your program. And what can this look like for clubs? So this is Matt's club, Pickering, in Ontario, and this is the pathway that he's developed in his club. So again, you can see all abilities. So we're talking here pan disability. So, and I like the inclusion. And when I done the soccer ability program in Alberta, we actually played in the first season of FC Edmonton's inaugural season, and we got on half time at one of the games. And I remember turning up and hearing personnel from FC Edmonton saying, how are we going to do this? What's going to happen? They've got wheelchairs. I don't know what's going to. And it was fantastic because I smiled at myself because I've lived there. We set up 2 goals. We got a couple of balls. I think we had 3 or 4 different games going on the same field, and we let the kids just go and play, irrespective of what impairment they had. They just went and played, and that's all they wanted to do. So sometimes we get caught up on that. Now you can see here then Matt is following some of the LTPD and the multi-sport program. This is what Pickering are doing. Could this link into your club? Could this be Edmonton Scottish? Could this be at Calgary Blizzard? And why not? And again, you're developing opportunities for your coaches. As a coach at a club, could I coach within this program and then go and do my under 12 tier 1 elite youth team? Absolutely. So it is possible. What would it take to bring this on? Well, you've got the equipment. Hopefully you've got some space that you can use, and you've got the coaches. So the resources are there for clubs to adopt this. And the barriers that people put out are interesting, and some of the fear. And that's what I would love to do with your clubs if you're online, and come to me and we can ask it. So in long-term player development, these are the 7 stages. Predominantly in grassroots, we work with the first 3: active start, fundamentals, and learning to train. In disability soccer, there's 2 additional stages. The first is awareness, and it's for soccer organizations, and it's a real challenge, and I keep on about this. It's the communication. So if you've got a child with an impairment, you're really tied down to going to schools and supporting their needs there. Do you have time to go and look for soccer? So we as soccer organizations need to reach out to each individual player, and again, the impairments within those groups. So it's not a case of saying we're doing an adaptability program. You need to go and link with someone with cerebral palsy, maybe someone with visual impairments. How do we get that awareness across? And for me, that awareness challenge is the same regardless of whether it's an impairment program or your normal competitive program. The challenges nowadays are that we have so many methods of communication that we get lost. So if I'm working with a group of 10 parents, only 2 may listen to a certain message because it strikes a chord with them. If I might need to do the same message, but add a different part to it to get to another 2 parents. And that's where I think awareness, as soccer programs, as soccer clubs, we need to be better in identifying those channels to communicate. And then allay in any fears regarding children coming in and playing soccer. One of the questions I had many years ago was from a parent who didn't know soccer and had a child with a disability was, I hear lots of players break their legs playing soccer. Will that happen? And I had to allay those fears that, yeah, that can happen, certainly at an adult level, but very rarely will it happen in children's soccer. We're there to support you. So it seems a silly concern to some, but it's a big concern we need to allay. And that links then into first contact. And I think this is something we need to look at big time as well. And it's not just with an impairment. First contact, when a child comes into a program, are the coaches welcoming? Are they smiling? Are they connecting? Are they supporting the needs of the player? Irrespective of age or ability, if you get someone coming, a newcomer coming from another country to Canada, how do we make them feel welcome? But these are two stages that are added into the disability program. And I think we as a soccer community really need to be looking to support as we go forward to try and rebuild our sport. So I'm saying they're in the long-term play development for disability soccer, but they're good practice for all soccer programs. The Coaching Disabled Footballers course that I've delivered in England and in Canada is good practice regardless of what club you're at. Now, what does it look like? And this is something I want to put out there for you to, the coaches certainly to consider, but also the parents and the administrators. This is the inclusion spectrum, and it shows you, I'm only going to talk briefly on it. If anyone wants more information, I'm happy to share that. It talks about running activities in 4 styles. The first one is open activity. It's all inclusive. And it's really like our school soccer programs, where we just get in the program and we go and play. We get out at recess, we play. As children, it's shinny hockey, street hockey. Everyone plays, no adaptations or modifications. The next one is modified. Same group activity that will have modifications to allow to serve all participants. So again, this is just good coaching. If you're doing a coaching session and you're working on crossing, some of you coaches will know we do the channel game. We put a channel in, and you can't score unless you get it's from a cross. We can do that to serve the participants with any impairment. It's just knowing what you need to do to adapt it. So again, there are rules that, and I'll come on to some of the game formats. There are different rules that modify it. So with the cerebral palsy, which Drew will talk to, they play 7-a-side. It's not 11-a-side soccer. So it's the same group activity, but there's modifications to allow all the participants to compete. Separate activity. And I like this because it's no different to a lot of clubs. We've got FC Edmonton, as I say, and the Cavalry down here. They'll be training pre-season for their big tournament that's coming up. And the goalkeepers won't be working all the time with the defenders. So we split players away. And this is what you can do in your club activity. So if I'm working with an inclusion, an adaptive group at a club, I may split different groups off and work on different tasks so that at least they're developing confidence and ability within their performance. The last one, which I really like, and I'm going to explain it in a different way, and I think this is where coaches really come to the fore. The group does the same activity, but they embrace modifications. So when I was in England, I worked at a centre of excellence for female players, and we had 10, 12, 14-year-old age groups. And traditionally, all the coaches came in and they all just done what they wanted, and the parents would look at one group and another group and compare, and it never looked solidified. So what I've done is I've done a program, and because I've got 3 boys who are 2 years apart. So if you're doing that program, you could have a child in each age group. And so parallel is really fantastic. And it's a bit like spinning plates. Everyone works together, but one age group will be doing dribbling slightly easier than the older age group and slightly easier than the top group. So the top group may be playing against players. Second group may be playing with players with limited movements. You might do crab soccer, and then the youngest players may be dribbling around cones. When they get in the car at the end of the session, the parent may ask, what did you do at soccer? And they've all done dribbling. So everyone feels like they're included. Now, the coach I spoke about earlier from Middlesbrough once said to me when I explained it, he said, John, we can't do that. That's too hard. And I looked at him and smiled. I said, that is exactly what you do. That is what good coaches do. That is, again, similar to the separate activity. That is what we do. We look at the needs of the players and match the coaching, the activity to their needs. So it's key. And this is why I'm saying coach development for adaptive soccer is really, really key. as a young, COVID has really allowed me to look back on my coaching career, the last 30 years. And I keep saying it. When I came into coaching, I done my coach education courses, and all I was worried about, and I see it even now, okay, that all sounds good, John. Just tell me what I need to get my certificate. Get the certificate, get given a team. Okay, this is what you need. We're going to set you up to play as Mr. Bielsa. We're going to play Bielsa ball. High press, hit the tee. With my U8 team, it doesn't work. You've got to know the players. So that's why I'm saying this model would be really key to understand for all your coaches. It's going to make them better coaches. Now, another way to do it, and someone said, is how do I do it? Whenever I work with a group, if I'm working with an autistic group, I will look to challenge and make fun for all the activities. They've got to be fun, and the kids have got to be challenged. And this model is a simple way that good coaches will do it. You adapt space, you adapt task, equipment, and people, step. So I'm going to give the simplest game that I used to use for my son's U8 to U10 team. Every practice, I'd say, boys, what do you want to do for warm-up? King of the ring, tigers in the jungle, whatever you call it, dribble around, knock the ball out the square. Everyone has a ball, dribble around. When I say go, it's on. Try and find out player of the ring, king of the ring. So how do we adapt that? When I started it, the space was quite big because they were 7-year-old. 2 years later, the space was quite small. So you adapt the space to meet the needs of the players. If it's too easy, you make it bigger. Too challenging, too challenging, you make it bigger. Too easy, you make it smaller. The task, I'm doing the same drill for 2 years. So we got there. Okay, boys, left foot only. Most of the players are right footed. Using only the sole of the shoe to dribble and the top to poke the ball out. So we can change the task. Equipment, how do we change equipment? So we can use a tennis ball. It's going to make it challenging for the players to dribble a tennis ball round. Still working on those skills. And I don't know if anyone has ever seen a power soccer ball for the wheelchair guys. It's a big, big ball. And I can remember playing with academy players at Middlesbrough with one of those balls. And it was fantastic because I was as good as them, because it was unique. And I do mean it, I was as good as them, because they couldn't control that ball as well as me. So it levels out the playing field. Again, other equipment considerations might be goals, sizes of goals and stuff like that. And then the last one to adapt is people. And people, if you're working in a group, you might have boys and girls on the field. So you might do boys versus girls. You might mix them in. You might do size. You can change it up any way you want. Even in King of the Ring, I done a soccer camp once and we only had a few girls. So I got them to compete against the boys. And I took the girls aside and I said, play zonal. Just don't let the boys behind you. And the boys, being gung-ho, just went to try and steal the balls. And it was fantastic. So in that one, I changed the task and the people, and the girls won because they understood the game. So please, when you look at a session and the players are struggling with it, you've got to ask yourself, are you challenging them, and is it fun? So space, task, equipment, and people. And in terms of adaptive soccer, I'll talk to a young lad called Cody, and he's from Edmonton. He's a fantastic kid. His shot was exceptional. He had quite severe cerebral palsy, so he had very little variability in his movement. Whenever he struck the ball, it went the same place, same speed every time. And when we went to play some outdoor games, he couldn't run as well as other players. He's now actually using a power chan, join the power soccer guys. But we would create a zone. And in the game, you had to play Cody in to get the ball back to try and score. So again, we adapt in space, the task, you could even say equipment, and the people. So I hope some of that makes sense. And I know, I'm sorry, I'm going to apologize that I'm talking through again like a bit like a podcast. I can't see any comments coming in on at the moment. So how does this impact your club? Coach training will meet, and it focuses, like I said, on meeting the needs of the players. The Coaching Disabled Footballers program was one developed many, many years ago in England. I think it is very, very good in terms of getting coaches to understand how to meet the needs of those players. It also looks at terminology, that I want to talk to in a moment. It gives you confidence. When I'll speak to this program. When it came out, it's half a day of education in a classroom and half are down the field. And I was at Middlesbrough with some ex-players who just retired from the game. And I still vividly remember doing the education in the morning for all my coaches. And one of them who just retired come up to me at lunchtime and said, John, I'm really sorry, I can't stay, I can't do this. And I'm like, what's the problem? And I'm thinking he's got a conflict elsewhere. He said, no, not comfortable. And I said, please stay. Let's just try and see how it goes. I'll get someone to support you. And this was a guy who'd played high-level soccer and professional soccer. He had a great career in the lower leagues, and he wasn't used to working with players of different ability. We got him to stay, and he got that connection. He saw that these players had the same fire in the belly as he did. So we need to get players confident in going and coaching. It's the same as any new parent coming into Timbit soccer. If they don't feel supported and have the confidence, they're not going to stay. The program also looks at really good adaptations and gets players to coaches to experience how to adapt those. And like I say, the experiential experience, giving coaches that hands-on experience to work with those players. You know, we've got a picture there of the amputee soccer. I was blessed when I was at university that the university I was at hosted the Amputee World Cup, and we had a team of Brazilians come over, and it was so powerful. These guys are doing full-on bicycle kicks with crutches. That's one of the rules of the amputee soccer. I'll say, once you do get into, and Drew can talk to this, once you're working with a group and you engage with them, the humor comes out. I can remember we had one lad who he had a new false leg put on, and I wasn't actually at a practice, and they were training in Middlesbrough. And if anyone knows Middlesbrough, it's not a very affluent area of England. And the lad took a penalty kick and he lost his leg. His leg flew over the fence. And my coach told me the next day that they had to go and get it. So the banter amongst themselves is fantastic. And we do need to be considering those relationships in order to have that banter. So benefits of adopting adaptive soccer in your club. Better coaches means better programs. Better programs means more appeal. We know the greatest tool of recruitment for players is word of mouth. It's parents who say, yeah, go to Coach John, go to Coach Drew. They're really good coaches. They'll look after you. So good coaches will develop good programs, irrespective of whether it's the top tier 1 club, whether it's the Alberta Youth Soccer License Club. If you've got good coaches, you will get players coming in. Community profile. If you've got an adaptive club within your organization, that's going to appeal to more sponsors and grant funding opportunities. Most of the impairment groups out there, when they go to seek funding, they're asked who you're partnering with. So we need to bring people together in order to seek those funds. As I said earlier, siblings may play as well. Coaches with someone with an impairment. One of my best coaches in Edmonton got involved purely because his daughter's got Down syndrome, and he's been fantastic. So how many other coaches out there don't come into soccer because their child's not playing it, because there's nowhere for them to go? And then, like I say, equipment, personnel, and facilities. Now, terminology. This is where we go back to the dark days, and I was talking to this morning. And it's just culture and how we grew up. And I know we got a few people who probably lived a little bit in England. I can remember as a young boy walking up the high street, and if there was someone with a Down syndrome, we would cross the road. We might catch it. Children were put in institutions. Again, we know about institutions here in residential schools. That's the model that where we've come from. And we need to change that in order to make it more welcoming. It's not acceptable today, you know, and these are some of the terms that have been used, and they really hit home. So sorry, I'm going to go back. The wheelchair bound one is one that is even used even now on news. And I love the picture of the young girl. I've never seen someone bound to a wheelchair. No one goes to sleep in a wheelchair. They're not bound to it. They use a wheelchair. The terms retard and handicap, even, that comes from cap in hand and begging. The such negative connotations, and no one would want to come to a club like that. So in order to use corrective terminology, we're told people first. You've got to consider that. So even with blind soccer, not everyone is 100% blind, which is why you'll see images. And even David Beckham done an advert once where blind soccer players have to have blindfolds on. Wheelchair bound, no, they use a wheelchair. Person with intellectual impairment. Again, if we look on the spectrum, some of the most intelligent people have got autism. And so we need to embrace that. Deaf and dumb. These were terms that were bandied about as labels. Person with a hearing or speech impairment. Able-bodied is not a great term because it means, and I don't know anyone who's fully able-bodied. We see a lot of soccer players who may have an uneven gait, and Drew can allude to this because he's looking for those players who might have some cerebral palsy to come and play for him. So I don't know anyone who's very able-bodied. Some people can do more than others. So please, when we look at our terminology, and it's a big one now, and it's not just it's all groups that are underrepresented. We've got to be really careful. And I know that in the last 4 or 5 years, there's a big push, and I still struggle with it. In you come guys, meaning girls and boys. We don't do it anymore. They're either coaches or players. So we've got to be respectful of changing culture in order to embrace more people to come in. So quickly, I'm going to welcome Drew to come on. Has anyone got any questions that they want so far in terms of what I said so far?
Could I ask a question, John? I have one of my athletes on the call right now, Nathan, and he's very competitive, but his dilemma is that he has mild spasticity, I guess. I don't know if that's the right term, but he's also partly blind. And he tried out for his school soccer team, and maybe his mom can talk or Nathan can, but because of his sight, they decided to cut him off the team because of that limitation. So here he is. He wants to potentially try out for the pair team one day for Canada, but he's kind of in an area where he can't get the competitive soccer that he needs to build his skills. And the program I'm running with pair soccer is there's such a variety of disabilities that I can't challenge him enough. So
I mean, for those who don't know, this is Corey, and he runs the Soccer Ability program now in Calgary along with Sam, and we take all impairments. And within the program, and I'll talk to him in a moment, and Drew can, a few years ago, I found a young lad, Lucas, who I found him on a cerebral palsy 10K run, and we linked him through. He now, he's playing for the national team. He needs to be challenged. We all need to be challenged. And that's one of the challenges, I think, with your program, Corey, is because it's run separate from soccer. There's so few players who know about it and can go. Now, if we split them off to clubs, can we fit those players into different levels that are going to challenge them? So again, if Nathan, how old is Nathan? Good.
Oh, Nathan, are you on?
Yeah.
I think he's 15.
So if he's 15, could he play at a younger age group that might challenge his ability to catch up with others? And these are the sort of things that we can do within soccer to help these players. At the moment, he can't play with the 15s. We don't want him really to go and play with the 5s. We want to put him somewhere comfortable where he's safe. And the coaches then also know how to understand how to support his needs. So if he's got an visual impairment, can they use a different coloured ball for him? And I'll talk to it briefly. When you and Drew's online, and as a coach working within disability soccer, if I'm not sure what a player can do, I just ask them. So Corey, what can you do? What is your movement like? And it's important that we do that and we have that communication. I've seen so many people who go and ask a caregiver or a parent, what can Corey do? No, Corey can speak for himself. He can advocate for himself. Corey, what is your limitations? Can I push you here? So I'll go back to the young boy, and Corey knows him well, Cody. I never once asked him what he could do. I just pushed him and pushed him, and I had someone who was then from the rehab hospital who could help him with his physical movement, and he would tell me if I pushed Cody too far. Cody would tell me if I pushed him too far, but sometimes we're frightened of pushing players. Yeah, think about your tier 1 team. You push them, you make them do extra runs if they lose. So because someone has an impairment doesn't mean that they can't be challenged and pushed. So that's for someone like Nathan, it's finding a fit for him. And you know, if any of you do know players with an impairment, I've got a slide in a moment for a contact for that. I just want to bring Drew on. Drew, can you share some experiences from your time with Canada Soccer? You there, Drew? Is he there? Yeah. Welcome. You're on mute. I can't hear you, but maybe everyone else can. Can we hear him?
I can't hear him.
Anyone else hear him?
Nope.
Anyone get Drew? No. Okay. No, he's okay, guys. I'm gonna go back to the Drew. Can you get on? Have you turned off mute?
I think he's off mute, but unfortunately, I don't know if his connection or his speakers are turned on or microphone is turned on for whatever he's using. So I think he's trying on a different device here. Just one moment.
Okay. And there's the comment coming there. Yeah, that is the quietest I've ever heard Drew. I'm going to go on quickly, and if we can get Drew in, I'm going to go on quickly. So this is a picture of Lucas. Like I say, Lucas has gone on and with Corey and trained with the para team and Drew and traveled the world and on training camps. And everyone should be afforded the opportunity to go and play at the highest level they can. So is there more players out there with cerebral palsy who could do that? I know one of the exciting times in England when I was involved in the disability soccer was they got involved in the learning disabled soccer, and Jeff Davies, who was in charge, his first team, they went to Yokohama and played in front of 50,000 to beat Holland in the World Cup. And that's a great experience, and that's what everyone aspires to. Drew, can we get you on?
I think he's on mute now.
Corey, have you got anything you want to come in and add?
Well, I can speak to what the program has done for me, or I can speak about what the program looks like.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
So, I mean, for me, Corey, can you give a bit of background on your pathway within soccer and how important you think it is? So, one of the things I want to speak to as well, I'm going to be sort of responsible for looking at some of the provincial licensing that's going to come within Alberta. And Canada Soccer have said it, that every club should be providing accessible opportunities. So this is going to hopefully come down the line where clubs are going to have to provide these opportunities. So if Corey or Nathan, as he alluded to, goes to a local club in Calgary, that club should be duty bound to provide an opportunity. Now, they can't say we haven't got any coaches trained for that. They need to get the training in. They shouldn't be saying, well, we haven't got access for these players. They need to do that. That's bound by law now. So,
Oh,
sorry, can you give us a
yeah.
bit of background on your development?
Well, just even as a young teenager, like I played soccer in school and I did track and field. And for me, even when I ran track, I would come in second last or last. And personally, I felt like a loser because I couldn't keep up with anybody and nobody understood my disability. But at that time, I didn't realize that there were all these opportunities out there. So when I was 37, we had our first kid, and when my wife went back to work, I was at home watching my daughter Emma, and I started getting really depressed, and I didn't have a purpose. So I started doing track and field, and I excelled. I set a few Canadian records in my category. And then one day I got a call from Drew and another person inviting me to come try out for soccer. And oh, one second. Okay, thank you. So sorry, my daughter was talking to me,
That's good.
but so I I tried out for soccer and my skills weren't there yet, and that's when Drew got back to me one day and said, "Well, why don't you train to be a goalkeeper?" And I hired a coach, Samantha, and we really worked hard, and I took it seriously, and I realized all the potential skills or the abilities I had, and and I went to a few camps that summer and that fall and or spring, and it really helped me a lot with my confidence. So, like that depression wasn't there no more. The drive to want to be better and the one who makes his team, it ultimately it gave me an outlet to be able to compete. Yes, girl. Sorry. So, but it's a confidence for me that's really been a key thing. So, and now I'm 45 and I'm still trying to chase my dream to be a goalkeeper. But it's not about making the team at this point. It's about the competitive drive to go drop in 3 times a week, to work out, to keep eating what I need to eat, and whether or not I make it, that's not the important thing. It's what I'm doing for me as myself, and that that ultimately that reflects on my family and everybody around me that I interact with, because what you learn from what I've learned from the sport is and the discipline and all that, it affects all parts of my life. So when I run para soccer and I see all these young kids up to adults that just want to be part of something, and they just want to have fun. Like there's some days that I have kids with autism that they love just scoring on their own goal, but it's that smile and that that knowing that they feel like they're part of the team and they're competing, and there needs to be more opportunities for people to be able to compete at different levels, because our program just can't do enough. And I appreciate what you said about Nathan and other players. Like there is more of a competitive opportunity out there. We just have to seek it out a little bit differently, and 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 advocate for our athletes so that they have the opportunity.
Thank you. That's a great reflection on everything that we're trying to do with adaptive soccer. Like I say, I don't know if Matt's online, if he can speak to us, but there's over 20 clubs that are offering this opportunity. And the things that Corey has spoken to there is the same as any child coming into any sport. They want those opportunities, and they're not all going to be Alphonso Davies. Some of them are going to go and play at just a recreational level, but it's the benefits that come from that in their own personal life, and the parents to enjoy that, a sense of community. So it is one of the things that I am going to be doing is over the next few months is trying to get a committee, a group together to look at this from an Alberta soccer perspective, from all key stakeholders, clubs, and trying to support people to really kickstart this in Alberta. We want to be competing like BC. They do great programs. Ontario, we want to compete. And one of the opportunities I would certainly like to support is can we train our own workforce to be better coaches and embrace that adaptive soccer approach, recognizing that, as Corey has said there, it is as competitive as any other level of sport. And again, we've got to break down all these perceptions. I know within another program that I made co-ed 2 years ago, I had a parent telling me that I just relegated the program to such a lower level now because I was bringing in girls. And we've got to see beyond this now. We've got to grow our sport out of COVID so that anyone can come and play. And it is a case of mixing and matching. And like I said earlier on, I'll vouch that you probably, as coaches, as parents, will see your children playing with other children with some impairment. But are you aware of it? Myself as a triathlete now, going out and competing in sport, there is I'm just gonna come out this presentation here. I want to pull on another presentation that I developed for this. And
hi, John. I'm just gonna jump in. It's Claire. I think Drew went out and came back in, and I think his mic's available. I don't know, Drew, if you can give me a thumbs up on your camera or just.
I can hear you. I can hear you guys.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, so we do have Drew operational now. That's wonderful. Thanks a lot, Drew, for your patience on this.
Sorry for the laptop difficulties there.
No problem. So, Drew, yeah, can you give us some reflections on your experience? Obviously, you know Corey quite well. Your experiences, because you've worked last 10 or so years in this area. Give me some of your journey and how we can make it stronger for programs like yourself.
Yeah. And again, I'd just like to say hello to everybody first. Listening to what you said earlier on, John, and everything you said, I've gone through this on many, many occasions. One of the hardest things that we have when dealing with, say, recruiting for the para team is how do I get across the provinces like Alberta all the way to, say, Nova Scotia and Newfoundland and find players. In the able-bodied world, as we don't want to use that word so much now, it's easy where John Herman just goes watches a game, whereas national team players are playing, or possible national team players, and watches them. So we've tried to create, like yourselves in Alberta, programs for a start, and then we try to get them out. Now, the hardest thing for you guys to create, and what I believe anyhow, and for the national team is, and you've called it earlier on, is awareness. I mean, how do we find the players, and how do you create a program for the players? So it's like the chicken and the egg. Do you create the program and go find the players through schools, through social media, through this and that, and then have people commit to it? I used to go back to Montreal once a year, and they had a disability program, had a session every Saturday, and there used to be 50 to 70 kids in wheelchairs, cerebral palsy, blind, deaf, and they had coaches coaching these sessions for 3 hours every Saturday morning, I believe, or Sunday morning. All their parents were there involved as well. It was one of the most coolest, neatest things I've seen, and they were all anywhere from 5 years old to 15. So that was really good, and that was brilliant how they've done it. I know Matt Greenwood and a lot of associations and clubs in Alberta or in Ontario are doing a great job. But for me, it's that awareness thing, and I'll just tell the people on board a quick story. We are our captain of our CP team right now. Our para team is named Samuel Sharon, and he won the Player of the Year, MVP of the World Cup last year. Right? There's teams like the English CP team, have 2 professional players that play in the first division in England on that team. And Sammy won the World Cup, won the Player of the Year at that World Cup. How we found Sammy is we were in Ottawa hosting a training camp for the para team. And we were on a field with about 15, 16 fields, and we gave our players a little water break. And Doug and myself went over to watch this little game for 2 minutes while they're having a glass of water. And this one little player, he was about 13 at the time. Every time he got the ball, he went by every single player and slammed the ball in the back of the net. We must have watched him 4, 5, 6 goals in 5 minutes. And as he was walking back one time, my assistant coach says, "That boy's got cerebral palsy." And I kind of looked and I said, "Really?" I said, "I don't see that." And he goes, "Yeah, he's got cerebral palsy." So we waited till we finished our training. We went up to the coach and introduced ourselves and just politely asked him if their little number 10 had any disabilities or blah, blah, blah. And he replied, "No, there's no issues there." And so we said, "Okay, that's nice. You know his mother or father here?" They said, "Yeah." And they introduced his mother, father. So again, we had a nice conversation and said, "Yeah, he had a stroke at birth and he had cerebral palsy." So there's a player who is arguably one of the top 5 players in the world, and he's only 23 right now, or 22. And his coach, his teammates, and me, myself, didn't even know he had. So is there hundreds out there that we don't know in that disability world that it's so mild? And some of there's some with stronger disabilities, some with mild cerebral palsy. But yeah, and just for a short thing, when you mentioned that 1 in 5, I live in a small town called Powell River in British Columbia. And we have a population of the youth soccer at about 270 people. So 270 people play soccer in the youth program, and 3 players from Powell River have represented Canada, and 1 still is for the Canadian national para team. So if I can find 3 in this little town of Powell River, how many thousands are there across Canada? Right? So again, it's on the bit of the selfishness side of it for a national program. How do we find them? We know Lucas through you. We know Corey through you. We know a few other through you. We got Scotty through Sammy and Corey. And we know about Nathan. We're going to have a look at him if we're ever allowed to fly somewhere again soon. Yeah. So the trick here is all my little notes here are exactly what you said. And it's the same in the real world, right? We have to find a program. We have to find some coaches. Players will come, definitely. I saw it in Montreal. I've seen it in Ontario. And from there, we grow. And then we grow, and we grow, and we grow. And then next thing you know, there'll be 56 clubs across Canada with kids all happy of all disabilities, wheelchairs,
Sorry,
power
Drew.
soccer.
Drew, you're mute again. Something's happened. You've gone on
No,
to mute.
must be. No, can you hear me now?
I can, yeah. Can everyone else hear?
I'm just turning it up a bit.
Okay, yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So what you've done and talked about, I think is 100% correct. But the question is, and you've done brilliant, John. Is how do we do it, and do we do it is more important, right? And how do we convince our bosses that this is what we need? Because when I watch FIFA things, I watch international federation stuff for soccer. It all says soccer's for all. I see it all the time. It says in every website I look at, soccer for all.
And I think it's like I'm alluding, if you're looking at the provincial licenses, and I'm meeting with Dave Nutt from Canada Soccer next week, it says that it's got to be accessible and inclusive. So as clubs, we're duty bound now to bring that in. And like Drew's just alluded to there, if you start building at a lower level, a small club, it's the field of dreams. If you have the program, the players will come, but you need the good coaches as well to drive that. And once people see opportunities, like I said earlier, the parent who asked about all soccer players break their legs. No, they don't. And once they see that as coaches, as an organization, there's an opportunity for them to play and develop the skills that Corey's talked about, the personal skills. And we see that Drew is providing those high performance competitive opportunities. I mean, tell me, Drew, where have you guys traveled to?
Yeah, I mean, we're very fortunate in our program where we have a 4-year cycle that has an international contest every single year. So I mean, I've been involved since 2004. So of course we've been all over the States, all over Canada, but we've been to Brazil 2 times, Holland 3 times, Argentina a couple of times, Ecuador. Anyway, you name it. We've been all over South America. We've been all over Europe. You know, we played at the English FA's training center. We've gone to live soccer games, watching games in Argentina with all the players. So every year we're traveling. Every year we're having a very serious competition. We've hosted 2 competitions with the Para Pan Ams in Toronto, and we also hosted the Americas in Toronto. So yeah, we every year. It's not. I know when I played soccer for Canada myself, if we didn't qualify for something, we didn't play for Canada again for another 3 years. So we're playing every year, competing every year, traveling. And just touching base a bit, John, on that, and to the other people here, I did a thing with Jason DeVos the other day, and we were talking about what was my proudest moment with the para team, and I really couldn't come up with a game situation, but I find it prouder that seeing that the players are grown up so much. So some of my players were, say, 15 or 16. Because of their disability, they were shy, they were quiet. You know, when we went on a road trip, we had to make sure we're all together and all that. And these same players now, if we go to South America, they stay another week or 2 by themselves, and they go hiking, they go visiting, they meet girls, whatever they do. Where 15 years ago, they would just walk with their head down and try to hide, right? And for me as a coach, that's more rewarding, I think, than winning. We won a bronze medal in Brazil at the Para Pan Ams, and that was very exciting. But watching people like Lucas and some of my senior players now that were young then, they've just grown into men versus very young kids that were very, very shy. So that's another reason these programs are very, very important.
Yeah, and that's the power of sport that we need to get clubs to understand. And, you know, we talk about growing membership and we talk about winning competitions, but when we all look back on our playing career, and I've just done a lot of webinars and I ask coaches and parents, what was your proudest moment? It wasn't the medal, it was the overcoming, it was the memories and the life experiences that come from that. So, you know, I know we're running out of time at the moment. I would love to welcome if anyone's got any feedback, put in the chat. Certainly email me. I know Drew is open. If you know anyone out there who certainly cerebral palsy, we have got other sports that are going on. Like I say, there's a Canadian power soccer team. There's lots of impairments. They do need the support. I think coming out of COVID, this is a great opportunity to really show the power sport. And I've got another presentation, and there's a slide in there, and I'll say that I like I said, I race in Ironman. And I've got an image of a guy who is a triple amputee and beat me in the swim in it. He raced with me, and in the same race, we raced top professional triathletes. That's a really inclusive sport, and it's fantastic and powerful to be part of that. Can soccer embrace that? Can they allow everyone to get on the field at the same time? And I think at the moment where we're going through this real uncertain period, this is when we shouldn't be worried too much about the competition, but actually just getting players engaged, developing and having fun. And the social interactions are really, really important. So quickly, I want to wrap up. I will be trying to communicate with everyone across Alberta and anyone else who we really want to try and catch up and follow Ontario, BC, and get something happening. And the power must come through the clubs, and there must be a willingness. They must recognize the benefits and the responsibility that we have to develop this inclusive sport. So if no one's got any questions, I really do thank you for your time listening, and thank you both Corey and Drew for your perspectives on disability soccer, adaptive soccer, inclusive soccer. That's part of what we're going to do. Yep.
Hey, John, it's Claire. So we had a great question come in the chat box, and it reads, from those attending, what do they see as the barriers to starting their program?
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah. So I don't know if you have any comments in regards to that. What do you see as a barrier that, you know, getting the programs off the grounds?
I mean, I'll speak to it because
Yeah.
I've worked in this area. Honestly, it's in Middlesbrough, Macclesfield, wherever I've worked in the pro game, I've worked in this area, and it's the communication, it's engaging, it's connecting, it's finding people and making them feel comfortable to come into an environment. And I think it's what we alluded to earlier. And then for clubs, it's seeing the benefits. At the moment, I think that's what we need to see, the benefits of it. So Lucas Bruno is now playing with Drew. What club was he associated to? So we all know who Alphonso Davies played for. So there's providing that pathway and getting that communication across to everyone and getting coaches comfortable. We can't just be looking at our membership and our competitive stream. We've got to look more globally. The clubs, if there's anyone from a club, if they can come in, and I'd like them to speak to, and it may not be respective of their club, just tell us quickly, why do you not have an adaptive program?
John, can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
This is from my perspective a few years ago. And I always thought the problem in Canada, again, big country, but a lot of the feedback I hear is, oh, we try to start a program, but we only have 1 or 2 kids. Right? So, and we know we could have a lot more kids. So I always thought Matt Greenwood and the work he's done and all the other clubs in Ontario, 17, 18, 19, they're doing a great job. But I used to think, I wish in BC, could they have one club, pick a club in Vancouver area, and maybe pick a club in the interior area in Alberta, maybe pick a club in Calgary and a club in Edmonton.
Yeah. And
try to get 30, 40, 50 from all over those areas just to sort of get that going and the build. Because I hear it all the time, oh, we can't run a program, there's only 2 people or this, right? So if each person in each province, we sort of work to get 1 or 2 going, and then potentially like Ontario, you can have 10 or 11. I mean, that's just my thought. I always thought it was a good way to get it going. But the more clubs, the merrier, obviously. But
that's where I am at the moment. I've got one club in Calgary, certainly, who said they're encouraged, and we need to get our impairment groups. You know, even Special Olympics. I know this is one of the issues with challenges within developing sport is that everyone works in isolation. So we look in clubs in Calgary, and they all work in isolation to each other instead of together. So one of the things that I do want to hit on is, and we've alluded to it, not everyone has the same impairment to the same condition, and some may have multiple impairments. So if you're cerebral palsy and you may have a visual impairment, which support group do you go to? Well, if you've got a club that can embrace that, then we can access through that. And so we need some club, and that's why I'm going to have some meetings soon and invite clubs to come in who are really interested in developing this program and supporting them. We've got to sort of break down some of the barriers. So that is the pigeonholing, the labeling that we see quite often. You're mainly cerebral palsy, so you go over there. No, I just want to play soccer. Give me a club where I can play. And as players develop, those competitive opportunities, like Lucas and Corey has had to go through the cerebral palsy team, the para team, will become more, you go down those specialist routes as they get older. The same as children, when we start out in sport, should be trying all sports. And whether it's swimming, hockey, or soccer, they specialize later on. But unless we get that foundation, and you're dead right. So I'm looking for a club in Edmonton, and I'm looking for a club in Calgary to take that on. But I'm also responsive, and I know Alfonso's on here, and I want to chat to him soon. Every club going through the club licensing should be providing accessible opportunities and inclusive ones. It's part of the requirement. And it'll be interesting to see how that pans out.
Yeah, okay, I agree.
Can anyone else talk, from a club on the barriers that they see at the moment? If it's coach education, we'll come and give you that. Can anyone speak to it? Absolutely, Alfonso, please.
Hello, hi.
Hiya.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, just to add on what both you and Drew have mentioned around the barriers. I think one of the experiences that I've had through trying to push initiatives such as this one through the grants program that we have is the clubs are wary and concerned about stepping into the unknown and not having the resources and saying, okay, we do want to do this, but how do we go about it, right? And that is one of the reasons why I wanted to join this call and this webinar, is to finding some of those foundational concepts that we can then share with the clubs, and then they can begin and run those initiatives, right? So that is the one item that I wanted to share, and of course agreeing with both of the items that you and Drew added.
So it's breaking down those barriers and showing them and guiding them. And I do this with my grassroots role within most programs, is the new coaches coming in. Now we're just taking it to another level with impairment coaches coming in and players, because we've got to also convince the parents that this club is safe for that child to come into, and it's a good positive environment, and that compounds it a little bit more. But I think that's the message that we need to get to clubs. Has anyone else got any other comments or any feedback?
Yeah, John, just for the people that are listening, I can honestly tell you, and I know my role in the national programs is a little different from what we're talking about right now. But every time I've been to a session right across Canada where they're running a session, doesn't matter if it was CP athletes or wheelchair athletes, I've sat on the side or sat on stage and watched the parents. The parents are ecstatic. It's a program that their kids can play in, right? They don't care if they're going to go to a World Cup or play for the national team, or they might hope one day they can play for a national team, but they're so happy. I see bigger smiles on the kids' faces, but I see bigger smiles on the parents' coaches when they're watching their kids get out of the house and doing something and playing soccer. It's truly cool. So if Alfonso's and the other ones have programs, get it figured out how to do it, get it done. I tell you, it'll be very rewarding, not just for the parents, not for the players, but for your club or your association.
Excellent. And I think we have a social responsibility as sports and sports clubs to offer that. Sometimes we look at the pennies and think that we can't afford it. Again, I spoke to you, Drew, and Matt, and I'm sure Alfonso's done it. It's when you come together and seek grants and sponsorship because of this, that you can build that opportunity to develop programs. So I want to sort of wrap it, because we're over the hour now, and I know it's your lunchtime. If anyone has got any questions, please reach out to me. I'd love to talk to more people on this, and it is a case of trying to convince as many people as possible that this is a worthwhile program that we are social bound to do now. It's something that is very, very powerful and important. So has anyone got any other questions?
Hi there. I don't have a question. My name is Rena. I'm a coach in a community league, but I'm also a parent of a 9-year-old with CP, and she's also a girl. So I started coaching about a year ago because I found, I guess I should add too that I'm also an occupational therapist and I work with adults with stroke. So I kind of had a different perspective coming in and getting her involved in sports, getting my daughter involved in sports. But I found just what you were talking about, the awareness is just so lacking in the community leagues, from parents to coaches. They really don't know if there is a child with a different ability. They don't know how to handle it. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to approach the child or parents. And they don't know how to adapt any of the activities that they're doing. So I think that first step is building the awareness. And the second step is the education. So I was really happy to receive the email to sit in on the call. I think it's so important. I can see, like, the reason why I started coaching was because I could see that my daughter was, her self-esteem was suffering because she was in a group of, girls that, didn't have any disabilities like she did. And so she was always behind. None of the drills were being adapted to make them not easier, but more achievable for her. And so when I started coaching, I was more aware of that and didn't adapt drills just for her, but for the group as a whole. And so that inclusivity, I think, really helped to build her self-esteem and her confidence. And it's just a night and day how how she perceives herself, I guess, in comparison to others, and even just how other people were more aware of her and willing to include her, not just on the field, but also in some of their interactions on the side as little girls having fun. They weren't hesitant to approach her, and, you know, actually she made a lot of friendships just, you know, from those experiences, I think, and that me trying to make it as inclusive as possible for all of the girls that I was coaching. And I found it was funny because we didn't win very many games, but I got way more comments from parents saying that their daughter had kind of the best experience emotional wise, you know, that they had really felt happy and supported in playing the sport, versus previous years where they had just, you know, didn't build confidence, didn't enjoy the season as much, and struggled more. Like it's not just physical disabilities, right? There's other kids that have you know, are shy or self-esteem issues, things like that. So I think you guys are doing a great job of trying to build the awareness and the education for this.
And I love what you're saying there, because again, I want to hit on. I worked at a club called Millwall, and if anyone knows Millwall, they're a really friendly, family-orientated club. Not, but we worked at a school which budded to a special school. So we would take children from a rough part of southeast London to a school across the road. And I know Corey does this. And one of the ways that clubs can integrate, and it's just got me thinking, is that buddy scheme. There's nothing more powerful. So I haven't seen siblings who, I know a girl that played, she's done a scholarship and been away to university, and her younger sister always wanted to play like her older sister, but was never allowed because she had a disability. If you do a buddy scheme in a club, it's a fantastic opportunity. Cody in Edmonton, his brother plays high-level soccer. To see his brother come and play with Cody, and Cody's the player, and his brother knows he's just following. It's really, really powerful. And like I say, as a child, I think you know, our generation, we were also always sort of pulled away, and now to see that interaction and that integration is very key. And so again, for clubs setting off a program, do it as a buddy scheme. Children can come and get an extra bit of soccer playing with their friends or siblings with an impairment, and they gain something from that. These children in southeast London, it was fantastic to see the interaction and the smiles on both sets of kids as they engaged and just played soccer or football back there. Mm-hmm. Has anyone got any other comments? Because I'm really conscious. I love it. I could keep talking for another 2 hours, honestly. And if not, me and Drew will keep talking. Rick Haxby, you can come on and say something. Has anyone got any other comments? Otherwise, we'll close down. I thank everyone, honestly, for engaging. Please think of some of the ideas and how we can certainly kickstart some more productive discussions in Alberta. I am going to try and email out everyone and get some more webinar calls to get clubs engaged, to get them to hear. So, Rihanna, I want them to hear your story. You know, I want them to hear Nathan's story and Corey's story on how important it is that they play in a club and they have that identity as a player. If we get that going, then hopefully the clubs will see that and embrace that as part of their responsibility. Otherwise, I thank you all for coming in. The weather's not looking as good as it was earlier in the week. Please get out and enjoy the afternoon if you're back to work. Hopefully this has given you a good, well-earned break. Reach out to me if you have any questions, any comments, any feedback, anything you can help us with. I would really, really love to hear from you. And let's get everyone back playing sport after COVID. Everyone should have a place to go. All right. So thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you all again soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody.